6 biggest Commander storylines of the day. And let's start off, actually, with a trade that was made between these two teams.
Number 4.
The Jahan Dotson trade. Anthony, should we play the Shane from Oxon Hill call again? No, we don't need to do that right now. Maybe if we have a little bit of extra time, but I want to try to stay on the clock and try to make sure that we have our full segment with Dave. The Jahan Dotson trade was a really critical juncture in the Commanders season. They kind of set the tone of like, hey, you either get on board with the program or you get out. And it's not about how you're playing in terms of the quality. It's about how you're going about your business. And it was pretty clear Jahan Dotson was not going about the business of being a Washington Commander in the way that the people in charge of the Washington Commanders wanted anymore. And so they said, hey, who wants Jahan Dotson? And Howie Roseman was like, we would like Jahan Dotson. And they gave him a third-round pick. That third-round pick kind of unlocks the extra draft capital that Adam Peters needs to go make the Marshawn Lattimore trade, and we'll see how that ultimately plays out in the long term. Meanwhile, Dotson hasn't really done a whole lot for Philly, and the pick that was exchanged for him is that of the Miami Dolphins, who are not very good thanks to the Tua injury, and all of a sudden that pick looks like it's going to be a pretty good one in the third round, barring a second-half turnaround. That is possible from Miami. They got a pretty weak schedule, but we'll see. Certainly, it seems like it's going to be no worse than the middle of the third round. So how did that trade for Dotson shape what Dan Quinn and company are trying to build here in D.C.?
Well, I thought, number one, with Adam, we always said this best decisions, for the team at that time, Ben. And so whether that's, trade or whatever that looks like, that's going to be kind of the driving force behind it. As you guys know, we didn't really talk about who's the two in that. We had a big, deep crew at receiver. Now that you've seen, kind of how the guys are used and where we're at. But that was the best op for the team. And John did a great job. He was here with us, and look forward to seeing him.
Classy, as always, by Dan Quinn, but there was a reason why Jahan Dotson wasn't like, hey, Dan, who's your number one? It's Terry. Okay, who's your number two? Well, we move guys around. If you had a guy who was number 2, then he'd be the number 2. And alas, he is not. They have gone by this rotation thing. Noah Brown obviously comes in. So there was a plan. They found ways to continue to supplement. They continue to compete, to kind of use their terminology. But it certainly, I think, sent a message of, it's our way or the highway. And most people got on board pretty quick. The couple stragglers, not so much. And I don't know, Emmanuel Forbes is still here, but deal with that a different day.
Number 5.
One of the guys who's gotten more opportunities without Jahan in the picture is Olamide Zaccheaus. And his emergence in the preseason, I think, probably gave them even more confidence to allow Zaccheaus, or to allow the Dotson trade to happen. They knew they had Zaccheaus. Luke was coming on pretty well. Some of the other guys that were playing good ball, Jamison Crowder, he wound up getting hurt, but he was a factor. And obviously what he brings as a punt returner was something they were hoping to have, and still could if he can get back off of IR. But last couple weeks, Zaccheaus has had some muffed punts. He had one against Chicago. He had 2 last week. Obviously lost the one that cost them a touchdown. And that, as much as any other of 10 plays you want to pick, cost them the game. So why is Dan Quinn sticking with Olamide Zaccheaus as his punt returner? Why that second chance?
Well, I think you have to look at the whole body of work in terms of the work ethic, what you've seen before. And so when you're going through it, you want to make sure there's not a pattern that comes up. And if that's the case, then it's somebody else's role to do that in punt return. But there's also a lot of work and trust that's been put into that. And so that's really where I look at it. And I'm at the top of everything, like protecting the team. And so that's where
That's where he sits. I think it's interesting for a guy that's muffed a couple punts to say, I'm protecting the team, but it also might mean that the other guys that when they said, hey, we're going to do punt catching today, does Sanders still drop him? Does Luke drop him? I don't know what the other options are, and he might ultimately be the best one. And, that's something that we've talked about with St. Juice at corner. We've talked about with some of these receivers, with, certain offensive linemen at times. There just are only so many good NFL players, and acquiring them is really hard. And so for a guy who is not the best at his position, it's saying that, hey, we don't have anything better is not endorsement of that player as the greatest of all time. I don't think they have any confusion that Olamide Zaccheaus is a punt returner who hasn't really done a ton as a punt returner this year, but he's been reliable outside the last couple weeks. But they don't think he's Dante Hall back there. Anthony, do you remember Dante Hall?
Number 82 for the Chiefs, one of the greatest and shiftiest punt returners to pick up a football. Oh.
You remember what it... Whoa. You almost fell there. Your seat just gave out on you. Glad that was captured on camera for posterity.
Yeah.
You remember what his nickname was?
Nickname? I don't remember the nickname.
The Human Joystick.
That does sound familiar.
Pretty good. Pretty good nickname. They don't think he's Dante Hall back there. They don't think he's Devin Hester. But he's the best they got for right now. And if that changes with some more data, a.k.a. more fumbles or, too many balls caught inside the 5, then we'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Number 6.
Last but not least, a good question, ask a head coach a day before the game. Hey, Dan, what have you seen on film from the Eagles that they do well?
I'll start for their defense. I thought their 5 down fronts, the 4 down fronts, I thought safeties down when they're back, the disguise. I thought Coach Fangio does a very good job and has for a long time, Kendi, into that space. I love the aggressiveness of their corners, playing tight coverage onto people. So there'll be a lot of contested throws and contested throws and catches. The interior part of their guys, big guys with size and guys that can rip off the edge. So a good challenge that way. Offensively, I felt run game wise was similar to what we have seen. Their line coach and staff there has done a fantastic job through the years in the run game, and they've added an explosive player to the mix in Saquon. Kellen, I thought, added probably different, his flavor and elements to the drop back game to go. But the addition of Barkley has really been, as it's been proven, a big addition for them this year. Special teams wise, big place kicker, that can hit it from deep. So the field position for us is going to be a big deal in this game. That's where I think of them all the top, and known quantity, tough group. And so for us, heading up there, division game, it's really cool. We're pumped.
Should be a fun one tomorrow night. There's a lot of talent on that roster, and Kellen Moore's found some ways to get it going here, but it really is an offense that does rely on Saquon Barkley getting them going with some big plays in the run game, and he has been able to do that pretty consistently. If Washington can shut that down, it certainly feels like they've got a great shot to pull the upset tomorrow night. But again, roster-wise, no doubt, Eagles have the better players up and down, but Washington has done better at using their players better to their 7-3 record. Philly 7-2 on a 5-game winning streak. We'll be talking about it not only for the rest of the show today, outside of Next with Dave Johnson. We're talking about the Wizards and Spurs tonight here on your home for the Wizards, the Team 980, but all day tomorrow starting at 4 o'clock. That is our Pick 6 at 6. Biggest storylines of the day. Tomorrow we'll pick the 6 players that we think will be most impactful in the game at 6 o'clock, so stay tuned, or be tuned in for that.